This is Interstate 40, a big 4-lane superhighway that makes it easy to get across the Texas Panhandle in a hurry. One of the casualties of this big nice road, though, is that it cut off the mother road, Route 66. A lot of small towns along Route 66 were bypassed and left to become ghost towns. One such town is Glen Rio, along the Texas-New Mexico border and on the mother road, Route 66. But it's still out there, and today we're going to find it.
Texas is full of lost history, from lost cemeteries to abandoned buildings, from the infamous to the obscure. My name is Bob Malden. I travel all over the state of Texas looking for hints of Texas' colorful past.
We're standing on sacred ground right here.
Our lost history. This is Expedition Texas, and we're going to find it. This week on Expedition Texas, we're headed out on a little bit of an adventure. We're going to West Texas to the Texas-New Mexico state line to find an abandoned piece of Route 66 and a ghost town that sits on it called Glen Rio, Texas. Along Route 66, Glen Rio, Texas was the first town you'd hit when you came into Texas from New Mexico. At one time, it was bustling with activity, but when Route 66 was bypassed in favor of Interstate 40, the town slowly died away. Glen Rio's origins can be traced back to 1901 when the Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad came through the area, and then 2 years later, Glen Rio was born. By 1920, Glen Rio had a hotel, hardware store, land office, and several grocery stores, service stations, and cafes. Then in 1940, scenes from the film The Grapes of Wrath were filmed in Glen Rio, Texas. Like so many other towns along Route 66, the interstate highway dealt a devastating blow to the businesses in the town of Glen Rio. What made it unique is its precarious position along the Texas-New Mexico state line. Normally, we research a location, then we find a local historian to be our guide, and then we meet up with that person and go check the place out. Nobody lives in Glen Rio, Texas anymore. The place is totally abandoned. So we just took off, headed out to West Texas just to see what we could find and hopefully stumble upon the old ghost town of Glen Rio, Texas. It was definitely going to be an adventure. And come to find out, this is the old Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad, which was responsible for starting Glen Rio in the first place. We're traveling Interstate 40 to West Texas in search of the legendary ghost town of Glen Rio, Texas, a town that boasted the first and last motel, depending on which direction you were traveling. It was either your first stop or your last stop in Texas. We're traveling out Interstate 40, headed to Glen Rio, and we knew once we got through Amarillo, we only had about an hour to go, so I was ready to kind of make a beeline and get there, but once we got through Amarillo, we saw a famous landmark that I just couldn't pass up. Cadillac Ranch was created in 1974 by artists Chip Lord, Hudson Marquez, and Doug Michaels, who were part of the art group The Ant Farm, consisting of what were in 1974 old junk Cadillacs representing the evolution of the car from 1949 to 1963. Located just west of Amarillo on Interstate 40, the piece draws hundreds of visitors a day with spray paint in hand because graffiti is encouraged. And if spray painting vertical Cadillacs isn't really your thing, you can always head back into Amarillo and try to eat a 72-ounce steak. But we had business to get to along the Texas-New Mexico state line, finding the old ghost town of Glen Rio, Texas. We had traveled about an hour west of Amarillo, so we knew we were starting to get close to Glen Rio when we noticed on the side of the road an old railroad bed. So I got out to take a look, and there are old railroad ties still along here. The tracks are long gone, but the ties are still there. And come to find out, this is the old Chicago, Rock Island, and Pacific Railroad, which was responsible for starting Glen Rio in the first place. Just another clue we were starting to get close to Glen Rio.
We're tooling along I-40 here looking for exit 0. That's the first exit if you're coming in from New Mexico, and the last chance if you're leaving from Texas. And we can get to the mother road, the old Route 66 roadbed there. That is where we'll find Glen Rio. And in Glen Rio, they had a motel that claimed to be your last chance to find a place to stay in Texas if you're headed this way, and your first chance if you're coming in from New Mexico. It is a ghost town, a lot of abandoned buildings that had a lot of history whenever Route 66 did come through. So we're going to check that out today, and I think we're coming up now on exit 0.
We had seen pictures, we had read accounts of people who had found Glen Rio, so we're up for an adventure thinking it's going to be a little bit hard to find.
I'm seeing what looks like an old roadbed off over here, and we're coming up on exit 0 here.
And then all of a sudden we see a big green sign that says, "Exit here for Glen Rio." And just like that, we were in Glen Rio, Texas.
I've always wanted to go find the old Route 66, and that's what we're on right here, is the old roadbed of Route 66. The mother road went all the way across the United States, and we're coming up now on Glen Rio, a town that was passed by, just kind of forgotten in time. So this is the Glen Rio post office. This is the New Mexico side. So let's head over, since this is Expedition Texas, and check out the Texas side.
We're in West Texas in search of the ghost town of Glen Rio. We thought we would be in for some exploring to find the old town, but turns out it's clearly marked how to find it from Interstate 40.
This is the original roadbed of Route 66, the road that took so many people across the United States until in 1952 it was bypassed and abandoned in favor of Interstate 40. And behind me, the now abandoned ghost town of Glen Rio.
And then it was time to explore some old buildings, so we started with the old post office that sat right on the Texas-New Mexico state line.
So this is the Glen Rio post office. However, this isn't the Glen Rio, Texas post office. This is the New Mexico side, because there were certain things you could do on certain sides of Glen Rio. Since it straddled the Texas-New Mexico border and gas taxes were cheaper on the Texas side, that's where you would get your gas. But you couldn't buy alcohol over there. You had to do that on the New Mexico side of the border. So let's head over, since this is Expedition Texas, and check out the Texas side of Glen Rio.
After exploring the old post office, we took off and went down a little trail back behind it to explore another old building that was back there.
Now look at the construction here. This is solid. This isn't going anywhere. All stone there. Wow. Very, very 50s the color here. This is, of course, when everything was abandoned in the 50s here. But you can tell this was probably in use up until then. But man, what a solid building this is. Ooh, wow. Oh wow, this a lot less left of this part of the building. Still have a concrete foundation down here, but the rest of it was wood framing. Kind of starting to come down, not feeling too safe right there. Wow, just not much left out here at all. So much of what's left out here in Glen Rio is going back to nature. You see like a roof here, or it might have been the side of a building that was sided in shingles. You know, this was a booming little town in its day, so it's not surprising that there's so much still here. Just wish we knew what more of it was.
A lot of the old buildings there have fallen down, and all that's left are piles of rubble and a foundation. But some of the buildings have really stood the test of time, like the old service station.
Gas pumps would have been here. And wow. Yeah, a lot of this is caving in, so not gonna get too adventurous in here. Not a whole lot left of the old service station. Some old booth seating, big fryer and different things. I believe we've got all the clues that this was the cafe.
Texas is full of lost history, from lost cemeteries to abandoned buildings, from the infamous to the obscure. My name is Bob Malden. Set out with me every week on a road trip across Texas as we find hints of our colorful past, our lost history.
Do you care if I go in there?
Each week on Expedition Texas, we're gonna find it.
Do you know how to listen for the clicks?
Watch videos, read blogs, post comments, and more at expeditiontexas.tv. We're in the West Texas ghost town of Glen Rio, Texas. Situated along the Texas-New Mexico state line, Glen Rio is a fine example of the types of towns that once flourished along the Mother Road, Route 66. After visiting the old post office and an old service station, we're headed into what remains of one of the old cafes.
This would have been a cafe. If you want to purchase some sunglasses, you could have done it there. And back here, through what I'm assuming was at one time a window, some old booth seating, big fryer and different things. I believe we've got all the clues that this was the cafe. So, I guess this would be where you'd come and pay out and pay the tab and take off down Route 66 a little bit further.
One of Glen Rio's claims to fame, if there were any, is that they had the first and last motel. It was the first if you were coming in from New Mexico. It was your first chance to stop and stay somewhere. If you were headed out of Texas, it was your last chance, probably for many, many miles. Glen Rio still had quite a few clues to its better days. And now, like so many other formerly bustling little towns on Route 66, it's just an old ghost town. If you stand there in the middle of the road with this cool little median that runs down the center of it and look around, you can almost picture this town when it was on the Mother Road. Cars were traveling back and forth between Texas and New Mexico or wherever they might be headed, and this was the little stop along the way, right there at the state line. You can just almost picture it when it was still alive. But you know, when I heard about this place, ghost town, right on the state line, Route 66, I knew we had to go check it out. And like we always say,
We're gonna find it.
Desert seems to call my name, begging me to pull off of this two-lane highway and stay. It seems that I've been here before, sleeping bag on the desert floor, and the coyotes howling at the moon. If I ever had a second home, this would be a place I could call my own. If I ever felt any peace, this would be the place that did it for me. Oh yeah. Cactus points up to the sky, telling me to turn my eyes up to the stars, to follow my heart and stay. A silhouette of sagebrush, big rocks of pink blushing to the night, against the sky of dark blue. If I ever had a second home, this would be the place I could call my own. If I ever felt any peace, this would be the place that did it for me. Stop my truck and get out a while. I look around and I feel a smile come across my face. I've found a place to get away. Even though I know I must go home, when I'm down, my mind will roam this landscape, and I'll be okay. Hey, hey, oh yeah.
This week we venture way off the beaten path to find the once boom town of Glen Rio, Texas, situated along the Texas-Mexico border. Wait, it's New Mexico again.